Reese here with Wrestler Inc., interviewing the notorious Lyndon Campbell of Temecula Valley High School. Where's your other half, by the way?
He's probably at home with his family right now, spending some quality family time.
That's probably what you should be doing, but you came out to appease Wrestler Inc. and do an interview on Foxcatcher.
Yeah, true that, but for the wrestling fans, you know, it's probably what we should be doing.
Appreciate it. So anyway, I wanted to get a little on you for those that don't know you, Lyndon. How old were you when you started wrestling?
I didn't start wrestling until I was like in the 7th grade, but I grew up doing judo. That's where I started, 4.5 years old. I did that full time until the 7th grade, and then I did judo and wrestling. I picked up wrestling, and I did judo wrestling all the way to my sophomore year, and then I retired judo, and then I just stuck with wrestling because I kind of liked it, and I knew that was probably my one shot to go to college on a scholarship if I had a shot at all. So I chose wrestling and dropped judo as my sophomore year in high school and continued out wrestling.
There's a pattern there with judo guys that switch over to wrestling. I think you had a pretty tough guy back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, we had a kid named Justin Flores, kind of took the same path I did, I guess, but you know, he's still going strong. He's actually an Olympic judo coach now and does the Ronda Rousey thing. You know, he's one of her training partners, you know how tough she is. But yeah, Justin Flores is probably one of our greatest technicians here out of Temecula Valley High School.
So you hear that, folks? You got to get your kids doing a little bit of judo. All right, so anyway, you started at 7 years old. What was it, the Jets?
Well, I actually started wrestling in the 7th grade, and I started out at Los Alamitos Boys Club, and my high school coach, Paul Seviano, was the wrestling coach. So he was actually my first wrestling coach. And from there, I moved on to the North Orange County Titans. We started wrestling at the North Orange County Titans. That's the likes of, you know, the Lawson brothers, the Tomaszak brothers, and myself.
The Orange County Mafia.
Yeah, that's what they call themselves, yeah, Orange County Mafia. And then I moved on to the Jets. I started wrestling, and actually, before I wrestled for the Jets, they had a judo program called the Jets, so it was kind of the same thing. So I started with the judo Jets. That was back in the day, probably a couple years before Bob Anderson started the wrestling portion of it.
That's another great coach, Bob Anderson.
Yeah, so I started wrestling with him, and you know, like Lawrence Jackson was a 3-time state champion, the Girardi brothers, you know, Mark Girardi was a 3-time state champion, the Millsap brothers. Aaron Millsap, bless his soul, who's no longer with us, but you know, the Millsaps were an awesome, great wrestling family, and you know, out at Victor Valley, the Henderson brothers, Ray Leonard, some of my good buddies out there.
Right on. So you went to high school at Santa Fe High School, the Chiefs, my father's alma mater, matter of fact.
Yep, Santa Fe High School.
Two-timers?
Yeah.
Two-timer? You gonna dance for us?
No, don't dance. But I was a 2-time state champ out of Santa Fe Springs, one of the first state champions in any sport there at the high school. But your father's alma mater.
Yep, 57, class of 57. So you got recruited to Villanova. Tell us about that.
Yep, well, out of high school, you know, I had some recruiting trips lined up, but Mark Schultz, who was at the time one of the coaches there at Villanova, was a California guy up in Palo Alto, was Olympic champion. He actually called my house and, you know, wanted me to come out to Villanova to experience, you know, what they had to offer, and I went there, and lo and behold, that's where I signed.
Great. Now, you were there your freshman year, and then what happened your sophomore year?
Well, I wrestled my freshman year that year. You know, it was first year on scholarships for Villanova. But I wrestled my freshman year. After my freshman year, in the summer, I came home, and basically 2 weeks before school started, they dropped the wrestling program for some incidents with DuPont and, you know, previous things that happened the year before that we were there. And so they dropped the wrestling program, so they kind of left me nowhere to go. And being on scholarship, what was I going to do? Wasn't like anybody had, you know, time to pick me up within the 2 weeks before school started. So I went back to Villanova and then just basically redshirted, sat out the year and redshirted that year.
And is that where you joined Foxcatcher, Team Foxcatcher?
Well, at Villanova, if you wrestled for Villanova, it was their club team. Team Foxcatcher was their club team. So like at Temecula Valley High School, we have our high school team, and then we have our club team, Team Temecula. So basically there at Villanova University, I started wrestling for them as my freshman year in college.
Great. But tell us a little bit about your experience there at Foxcatcher.
Well, Foxcatcher was, DuPont, John DuPont was the head coach at Villanova University, and he was his club team, so he basically owned Team Foxcatcher. And he named it after his ranch, 100-acre ranch that he had back there in Newtown Square in Pennsylvania. It was, at the time, I think the third safest place in the country to live. But anyhow, I wrestled on their club team, and we would basically travel. We'd practice out at the farm. He built a facility out there for wrestling. It expanded a little bit after I left. They expanded it more to 3 mats and a little bit bigger facility with video footage rooms and things they can do to film yourself and train. And then after that, pretty much we'd go to tournaments, wrestle in the Sunkist Open, any local open tournaments that we wanted to go to, we could wrestle in them.
And that was one of his goals, wasn't it, to be better than Sunkist? He wanted to be the top team.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the time, Sunkist Kids was the best team, not, at the time, and they've been one of the best teams ever, since I've been around. But yeah, at the time, he wanted to compete against Sunkist Kids, and lo and behold, you have $180 million. You're going to be instant success. All you have to do is hire, the best wrestlers around to go compete for you. So once you solicit them and get them to compete for you, yeah, you can go to a national tournament like an open division tournament like that and compete for the national title. And that's something that he wanted to do at Villanova, was to compete for and win a national title. But when you're talking private Catholic school, getting kids in with have decent grades and great SAT scores and ACT scores, you just can't. You could do it over a period of time because he had the funds and he had the resources. He just wanted it instantly, just like most people that have a lot of money. If they want something, they buy it. And that's what he was trying to do. Well, at the NCAAs, you can't really do that. You have to live by rules and regulations that they monitor you. So, he couldn't do that successfully or quickly. Maybe that was one of his way outs, and not doing it. And maybe his way out of saying, we're not going to win a title anytime soon, quickly. But so maybe he stopped funding it, and that's why they dropped the program. However, at the national level, he was putting money into USA Wrestling, and that was his club team. So, he was trying to win. So he hired the best wrestlers, the Schultz brothers, a lot of guys that were in the top 6 in their weight class already. He basically just hired them over to Foxcatcher, and that's who they wrestled for.
Who were some of the coaches over there at the time?
Well, at Villanova University, my freshman year, you had John DuPont. He was considered the head coach. He was the money man behind the whole thing. But he was considered as the head coach at the time. He brought in 2 guys, and this is where kind of the problems started, was he brought in Mark Schultz and promised him basically in a year or 2 that he would be the head wrestling coach at Villanova University. Bought him a house, $500,000 house, promised him the head job. However, on the other side, he also promised a guy named Andre Metzger the same thing. So he basically gave him the same deal, gave him a $500,000 house, nice beautiful house, promised him that he would be the head coach in a couple years. So those are 2 of the guys, and those guys were the best guys in their weight in the country, if not in the world. Also after that, he basically hired about another 4 guys that were in the top 6 in their weight class in the country. So you had Rob Calabrese down below to work out with the 18, 26 pounders. You had Glenn Goodman out of Florida. He was working out with the 36, 142 pounders. Then obviously you had Metzger in the middle. Then you had Schultz right there in the middle. Then you had a guy named Dan Shade, who was another California boy, wrestled at OU, was an NCAA champion. And then our heavyweight coach was like Bill Hyman out of Temple University, won an NCAA title there. So basically he just brought in these coaches, paid them good money, and they were still, a lot of them were training themselves. They were right on the top of the circuit themselves, like any good grad assistant or person like that. So those guys were still training while they were, still trying to train us.
Gotcha. So when you were there, you were seeing him fade a little bit as far as his mental capacity, or?
I don't think it was so much mental, but at the time, obviously there were some other, factors that influenced how he felt or what he did. You can say whatever you want, drugs, alcohol. I think that was probably the start of the downfall of where he kind of, but I didn't really notice the mental thing later until after I went away to another university after I transferred and then came back to train there is when I started seeing like him kind of start to lose it a little bit.
Can you say some of the stuff that you saw there? I mean, what was some of the stuff that you would normally see in a wrestling room?
Well, as young kids, we're 18 years old, we're there, for me personally, I came from a family that, you know, we didn't have a lot of money, so this was a whole new experience to me. I mean, I love the sport of wrestling, and that's why I did it. I put a lot of time in. My dad put in a lot of time of taking me places and making sure I was here and there, but when I went there, it was a whole different level. I mean, I'm going to a private university, you know, it's Catholic. The kids there, it cost, I think at the time, it was like $18,000 a year just to go to school there. And to me, that's an astronomical amount of money that, you know, I mean, I don't think we even made $18,000 in a year, right. You know? And so it was a new experience, but basically, practice, you know, basically the coaches would run the practice. I remember our very first practice I got there, and I had like, I forget what it was. There was something, I was coming off an injury and I couldn't make it. I was there at practice, but I didn't run. But DuPont took the guys out on the track, and there was a filming company there doing a story on them. So he took those guys out, and they probably ran, I would say not 10 miles that day. And I was in on riding the bike because I had a bad toe or something foot, and so I was riding the bike, so they were working me out in there. But out on the track, they kept doing retakes, and these guys, I mean, I don't think these kids ever ran that much in their life.
You picked a good time to have an injury.
Yeah, I picked that injury time. I'm a smart kid. I know those things.
Still got it.
But yeah, I remember that day. That was interesting. You know, there was times when he came in. You know, we'd have practice, and you know, our coaches would normally run that. They knew what they were. DuPont really, I would have to say, didn't really know much about wrestling. You know, he learned about wrestling at the time that he started picking it up. But basically, he came from a very rich family, the DuPont family out of they own pretty much the whole state of Delaware. DuPont Chemicals, you know, if you look at it, I think Pete DuPont back in the day ran for president. That was not his brother, but like a relation to the DuPont family. And basically, he didn't really know much. So he brought in guys like Schultz and Metzger and those types of guys and those coaches. So Metzger and Schultz were pretty much running the practices, and then those other guys were there to help one-on-one or, you know, beat us up when they needed to, rough us up to make us tougher. But
now, he did wrestle internationally, didn't he, a little bit when he was 50, 55?
Who, DuPont?
Yeah.
DuPont, I guess you could say he wrestled international, but we would have matches, like we would too, I think up in Lehigh, we wrestled in an open tournament, and we took our college team up there, and it was an open tournament, you know, it was local tournament, like if you go around here, it's local open division, but PA, you're in PA, so it's a little bit, you know, there's more people there at the upper level. So anyhow, so we went there and wrestled, and then our coach DuPont, he also wrestled in that tournament. But, you know, if that's what you call it, wrestling, basically people were nice to him because he had a lot of money. So nobody really would, you know, I think one guy, beat him pretty good. But most people, DuPont, he either tied him or he won the match. And it wasn't guys that he could beat. So to be honest, he basically probably paid him off.
The rock star life you guys are living, I know that some of you guys were living it up.
Yeah, well, the rock star, you know, living it up is like, once again, you know, when you say the rock star living it up, you know, we're still athletes, and, you know, as a kid, I grew up training and, you know, doing the right thing. But, yeah, when you talk rock star life, you're talking first class. You know, you're on a plane quickly, or you're not just on any plane, you're on a Learjet, you know, a 12-seater jet. We flew to Ohio State and wrestled in a three-way, basically. We wrestled Ohio State and a couple other teams, and Ohio State has their own airport. So we would drive the 20-minute drive over to Philadelphia in our vans. We would get onto a rented Learjet 12-seater plane. When you walk on this plane, there's couches, you have your one stewardess, she's taking care of, you know, everybody on board. You have nice big TVs, you got big leather couches. And basically, we're just on there, and like I said, rockstar life, yeah, I mean, you're getting on a Learjet. I've never flown on a Learjet when I was a kid. You know, so we get on that, we fly to Ohio State, land at the airport, wrestle our 3 duels, get back on, they'd have pizza or whatever. I think at that duel meet, we had too many
Great
people
wrestler
coming back.
food.
What's that?
Great wrestler food, pizza.
Yeah, on the way home, we made weight, you know, we're done. We wanted to eat on the way home, so rather than go to a fine dining restaurant, we just said, hey, we wanted pizza. Because when we would go out, we wouldn't go out to the local, you know, the fast food joints and stuff like that. We'd go to these fine dining places. That's where DuPont wanted to eat. And he didn't mind paying for everybody, but the problem is, you know, fine dining is way different compared to what you're used to as a wrestler, as a kid. You know, you're not used to these little tiny portions, and, you know, it's like probably too rich or whatever for your diet. However, like I said, we get pizza on the plane home. But on the way home from Ohio State, we had there was too many people. It wouldn't take the 12 passengers we had. We had more than 12 passengers. So he had to rent another 4-seater plane, jet plane. And, you know, who wants to go? Hey, I want to go, coach. So, you know, me and 3 of my buddies, we jumped on the plane in a 4-seater, you know, just looking at each other. Have our little pilots up there flying us home quickly, and another, you know, how long it'd take us to get home. So I think in that one day, we went to Philadelphia airport, jumped on the plane, flew to Ohio State, landed at the airport, wrestled 3 dual meets, got back on the planes, and flew back home, and we were home by that night. So, I mean, that's traveling first class.
Did you ever fly in the little helicopter?
After my freshman year, we were going to recruit the high school state tournament at Pennsylvania, at Hershey, Pennsylvania. I went with Mark Schultz and John DuPont and his pilot. Yeah, we got in his helicopter and flew from his house all the way to Hershey, Pennsylvania. We stopped like in between one stop to gas up or do something. I forget what it was. But yeah, we got in an helicopter, flew to Hershey, Pennsylvania, scouted the high school state tournament that year, and then flew back home.
Gotcha. A lot of famous people rubbing elbows with John DuPont?
Like, people would come by. When you're talking famous people, I don't know, you could say famous. I know there was a lot of people around, maybe people that I didn't know, but it wasn't like rock stars coming to visit or anything. I think he was just the wealthy family that, you know, they live. I mean, if you looked at the mom's house where she was at, you go into a room, they were all about dog shows and dog breeding, and, you know, they would have tons of stuff on the inside of the house that had to do with, you know, ribbons and stuff that you would see at a dog show, right? And breeds and the bloodlines that they bred through the years. I mean, just like if you go into a wrestler's house, you would like having all your ribbons and metal stacked from top to bottom in this huge mansion, right? In this room. So they were that. He was into growing up, I think, pentathlon, and I think that included some fencing. I think it was swimming. I think it might have been shooting, it might have been horseback riding, some type of horseback riding, but that's what he was in. It's a rich man sport, pentathlon. So that's what he was into growing up. Then as he got older, obviously he got into the triathlons. He was doing a lot of triathlons, so Team Foxcatcher had triathlon teams and swimming, and then he got into the wrestling side of it. He got into the wrestling, and that's when he came with Villanova. At Villanova, he donated, $25 million to open the arena. He built them a brand new arena back at Villanova. They put his name on there, John Luthier DuPont, which is now no longer there. They ripped it off. Villanova doesn't want to have anything to do with them now, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And nor should they, you know, nor should anybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're going to the premiere tomorrow night, aren't you?
Yep, my good buddy Tad Thermoscar, who's our 126-pounder, he's got together, him and his wife, and they've been, you know, hitting up Sony and them and saying, hey, you know, I'm getting a group of our guys together. So I think my roommate Al Ray is coming down from Northern California. Tom Rogers is coming down with his wife from Northern California. Greg Parvin, who was there after my freshman year, came my sophomore year to come to wrestle the year they dropped the program. He's coming down from Alaska. Those guys wrestled up at Lassen Junior College. Mark Schultz recruited a lot out of California because he was a California boy. So he would recruit out of California. And then obviously Tad Thermoscar is going to be there. And we had a couple other guys that were supposed to show up, but I think their plans fell through. I think one served in our military, Mark Lamauza from the Navy SEALs.
Boy, Mark.
Yep. And then thank you for everything you do for our country. And then the guy named Greg Alfonsi was supposed to come back from PA, but I guess, you know, he's got, you know, small kids and stuff, so he's dealing with those guys. But we get the premiere tomorrow night in Hollywood at I think it's the Dolby Theater, where they have the Academy Awards. And then Sony's hooking us up with the private screening that night. I think it starts at 7 o'clock. And then after that, the after party at the old Roosevelt Hotel across the street at the pool. So they're giving us wristbands to go hang out with and rub elbows or wrestle some celebrities or whoever, you know, hopefully wrestling fans, you know, some people that knew the story about the Schultz brothers and stuff, because that's what this is really about. It's about Mark Schultz and his brother Dave and how it went down and how DuPont ended up, in the end, killing Dave Schultz, who was one of our best wrestlers ever in the country. When you talk Dan Gable, when I grew up, it was Dan Gable was the guy, but Dave Schultz was the next guy. You know, he was loved by many. I mean, he would go to Russia. He won Tbilisi in high school, you know, and they loved him dearly over there. So, I mean, not only was he loved here in the United States, but worldwide they loved him. He was, you know, I don't think, you know, if you look at another sport, who would that person be, you know? And he was good for our sport, you know. And then Mark Schultz was obviously his brother who Dave got Mark into wrestling, you know, growing up. Mark didn't start till like his junior year. But he was one beastly dude, and he's a good dude. I mean, the Schultz brothers were, I knew California guys, and I grew up going to their clinics and, you know, trying to wrestle them, and, you know, they beat you up. And I'd have to say, when Dave did a move on you, it hurt. Like, it didn't look like it hurt, but when he grabbed you, he just knew how to apply the pressure, you know, like good wrestlers do. And he was just like, ow, that hurts, you know. And Mark was more like brute strength. I'm gonna rip your head off, right? Type of thing.
Didn't he break somebody's arm in the Olympics?
Yeah, in the Olympics, he broke the world champion's arm, and he actually has it on video. It's actually, I mean, it's not cool to see, but I mean, he shows, look, watch this, bam, key lock, guy's head to the outside, post it, keeps the arm going. That was the world champ. That's the one guy he had to beat. Well, what did he do? He broke his arm. So
did he get disqualified in that?
Got DQ'd, but if that guy can't continue, how's that guy going to take first place? So he could have one loss. He won his bracket, and then he went into the finals and won that. So him and you know, Dave Schultz were Olympic champions that year in 1984.
Yeah. Well, Lyndon, appreciate it. You know, it's great finally here, 2014. The story's finally going to come out. It's a tragic event, but it's about time. You know, the movie's finally here, and we're looking forward to it. And I appreciate you having us in here and letting us pick your brain.
Yeah, it's been great, and obviously it's just kind of weird because, you know, it is a story about something that's in my life, that's touched my life, and that it's out there, you know, and it's great that it's out there because, you know, the Schultz brothers did do a lot for our sport of wrestling, and it's interesting to see. So maybe after the movie, I'll come back and tell you what I actually thought of it to see if it actually is good or accurate. So
we'll do that. All right, Lyndon, thanks a lot, and go Bears.
All right, go Bears, baby.